The emergency alarm screamed through the command center of Ethros Prime. High Coordinator Velnara pressed her six-fingered hands against the control panel as another explosion shook the building. Through the massive windows, she could see the orange glow of fire spreading across her beautiful city. "Status report," she demanded, her voice steady despite the fear growing in her chest. 17 more evacuation ships destroyed. "Coordinator," replied her aide, Theron. His blue skin had turned pale with stress. "The Krex fleet has moved into close orbit. They're hunting our civilian vessels like animals." Velnara closed her large silver eyes for a moment. The Zephyrian people had always been peaceful traders. Their world was a paradise of floating cities and crystal spires. They had never needed weapons stronger than small defense fleets. Now the Krex Dominion was teaching them the price of such innocence. "How many ships have escaped?" she asked. "Maybe 300,000 of our people," Theron said quietly. "But the Krex have blockaded all the jump points. Our people are trapped in the outer system with nowhere to go." Another explosion rocked the building. This one was closer. Through the smoke, Velnara could see the dark shapes of Krex ground troops moving through the streets. Their heavy armor gleamed in the firelight as they advanced on the government district. "Coordinator," another aide called out. "The Krex commander is demanding our surrender. He says if we give up now, they will allow our people to live as workers in their empire." Velnara knew what that meant. The Krex didn't take prisoners or make deals. They took slaves. The lucky ones would work in their mines until they died. The unlucky ones would become test subjects for Krex weapons research. "How long until they reach this building?" she asked. 20 minutes, maybe less. Velnara looked around the command center. Her staff of 30 had stayed with her even though she had ordered them to evacuate. These were good people who deserved better than to die in a hopeless fight. "There is one option," whispered Kelton, her oldest advisor. He was ancient even by Zephyrian standards, his skin wrinkled and his voice weak. "The old emergency protocols from the first expansion. Those were banned by the Galactic Council centuries ago," Velnara said. "The Council isn't here to help us now," Kelton replied. "The Universal Distress Beacon. It sends a signal to every spacefaring race within 500 light-years. No filters, no diplomatic channels. Just a raw cry for help to anyone who might listen." Velnara felt her hearts beating faster. The Universal Distress Beacon was forbidden because it could bring unknown dangers. Pirates, slavers, or worse might answer the call. But as another building collapsed outside, she realized they had no choice. "The risk," she began, "is better than certain death," Kelton finished. "At least this way our children might have a chance." Velnara nodded slowly. "Do it." Kelton's shaking hands moved over an ancient control panel that hadn't been used in 300 years. The beacon was built into the planet's core communication system, designed to punch through any interference and reach across vast distances. "Signal ready, Coordinator," he said. "This is High Coordinator Velnara of the Zephyrian Consortium," she spoke into the transmitter. "Our world is under attack. The Krex Dominion is destroying our evacuation ships and murdering our people. We are a peaceful race with no military strength. If anyone receives this message, please help us. Our children are dying." She paused, hearing the sound of Krex weapons getting closer. "We are sending our star charts and the location of our remaining refugee ships. Please, if there is anyone out there who still believes in protecting the innocent, we need you. This may be our last transmission." Kelton activated the beacon. A pulse of energy shot out from Ethros Prime, carrying their desperate message across the galaxy at faster than light speeds. 6 days away, near the edge of known space, Admiral Sarah Chen was reviewing supply reports aboard the Earthship Indomitable when her communications officer called out. "Admiral, we're receiving a priority signal on the Universal Emergency Frequency." Chen looked up from her tablet. The Universal Emergency Frequency was rarely used. Most civilized races had their own diplomatic channels. Only pirates or desperate people broadcast on the open channels. "Put it through," she ordered. The bridge speakers crackled with static. Then a strange alien voice came through. The universal translator worked slowly, converting the alien words into English. "Children dying. Orbital bombardment. Please. Anyone." The message was broken and filled with interference, but Chen had heard enough desperate calls during her 20-year military career to understand the tone. Someone was in serious trouble. "Can we clean up the signal?" she asked. Her tech specialist worked for several minutes. Slowly, the full message became clear. Chen listened to the alien coordinator's plea with growing anger. She had seen what happened when aggressive species attacked peaceful ones. It never ended well for the innocent. "What do we know about the Zephyrians?" she asked her intelligence officer. "Small trading civilization, Admiral. Peaceful by all accounts. They've never bothered anyone. The Krex Dominion, on the other hand." He pulled up a data file. "Military dictatorship. They've conquered 12 systems in the past 50 years. They don't take prisoners." Chen studied the star charts the aliens had sent. The Zephyrian system was 6 days away at maximum hyperspace speed. If they left now, they might arrive in time to help the evacuation ships. But the Indomitable was just one ship, and according to the reports, the Krex had brought an entire invasion fleet. "What are your orders, Admiral?" asked her first officer, Commander Rodriguez. Chen thought about the regulations. Earth's government had a strict policy about getting involved in alien conflicts. They were supposed to observe, report, and avoid taking sides. Getting into a fight with an unknown alien empire could bring war to human space. But she also thought about the voice in that transmission. The pain and desperation of a leader watching her people die. "Communication, send a message on all military frequencies," she ordered. "Priority Alpha. All Earth vessels within 6 days hyperspace jump of these coordinates are to report to the Indomitable immediately." "Admiral," Commander Rodriguez said carefully, "that's Protocol Omega, are you sure?" Protocol Omega was the emergency recall order. It would bring every human military ship within range to form a battle fleet. It was only supposed to be used if Earth itself was under attack. "I'm sure," Chen said. "Also send a message to the Zephyrian coordinates. Tell them help is coming." "What should we tell them about our arrival time?" asked the communications officer. Chen looked at the star charts again. 6 days to reach a system where civilians were being slaughtered by an empire that had never lost a war. Any sane commander would call for backup and wait for orders from Earth. That would take weeks. "Tell them we'll be there in 6 days," she said, "and prep the ship for maximum hyperspace velocity." As the Indomitable's engines roared to life, Chen wondered if she was making the right choice. Earth had stayed hidden on the edge of galactic civilization for good reasons. Once they revealed themselves as a military power, everything would change. But as she listened to the Zephyrian distress call one more time, she knew she couldn't live with herself if she did nothing. The message from Earth reached Ethros Prime just as the Krex soldiers broke down the doors to the command center. Velnara smiled as she heard the simple reply, "Help is coming." "Hold on." She deleted the communication logs and faced the Krex commander with dignity. Whatever happened next, at least she had given her people a chance. Captain Marcus Torres was training in the gravity gym when the recall order came through. He was bench pressing twice his body weight in Earth standard gravity when his wrist communicator buzzed with the priority Alpha signal. "All hands to battle stations." He called out to his crew aboard the destroyer Relentless. "We've got a Protocol Omega." His first officer, Lieutenant Janet Mills, jogged over to him. She had been sparring with the ship's Marines in the high-gravity section. Sweat dripped from her face, but she wasn't even breathing hard. "Protocol Omega?" she asked. "What's the target?" "Unknown. We're supposed to meet up with the Indomitable in 4 hours." Torres toweled off and headed for the bridge. But Admiral Chen doesn't call emergency meetings for training exercises. As more Earth ships jumped into the rally point, the scope of the mission became clear. 15 destroyers, 6 heavy cruisers, 2 carriers, and the flagship Indomitable. It was the largest human fleet ever assembled outside of Earth's solar system. Torres stood in the briefing room with 30 other ship commanders, listening as Admiral Chen explained the situation. The holographic display showed the Zephyrian system, highlighting the positions of refugee ships and Krex forces. "Ladies and gentlemen," Chen began, 6 hours ago we received a distress call from a peaceful alien civilization. They're being slaughtered by something called the Krex Dominion. Intelligence estimates suggest we're looking at 1,000 to 1 disadvantage in ships and firepower." Commander Sarah Kim, the fleet's science officer, stepped forward. "The Krex use standard galactic technology. Energy shields, plasma weapons, and artificial gravity. Their ships are larger than ours but appear to be built for intimidation rather than combat efficiency." Torres studied the enemy ship designs. They were massive, covered in spikes and armor plating. They looked scary, but Torres had been in enough fights to know that looking dangerous and being dangerous were different things. "What about their ground forces?" asked Captain Lisa Wong from the heavy cruiser Devastator. "Unknown," Kim replied. "But based on their ship construction, They probably depend on technology to solve problems. Most galactic civilizations evolved on what they call garden worlds. Stable climate, low gravity, few natural disasters. Torres raised his hand. What does that mean for us? Admiral Chen smiled grimly. It means they've never fought anyone from a death world. The room fell silent as everyone processed that information. Torres had read the classified reports about how other species viewed Earth. To most galactic civilizations, Earth was a nightmare planet. High gravity, violent weather, aggressive bacteria, and predators that could kill with tooth and claw. Most alien species needed environmental suits to survive on worlds that humans considered comfortable. They needed artificial gravity to function in Earth-normal conditions. They had never developed the kind of immune systems that let humans eat food that would poison other species. The plan is simple, Chen continued. We jump into the system, assess the situation, and protect as many civilians as possible. We are not going there to conquer or make friends. We're going to save lives. Commander Torres thought about his crew. Every human aboard the Relentless had grown up on worlds where survival meant fighting not just enemies, but the environment itself. They trained in conditions that would kill most aliens. They considered radiation exposure and toxic atmospheres to be minor inconveniences. During the 6-day journey to Zephyrian space, Torres watched his crew prepare for battle. Unlike the precise, technology-dependent fighting styles used by most galactic civilizations, humans trained for chaos. They practiced fighting in zero atmosphere, in crushing gravity, and in complete darkness. Dr. Emma Rodriguez, the fleet's chief medical officer, briefed the commanders on alien physiology. Most galactic species are fragile by our standards, she explained. Lower bone density, weaker immune systems, and they depend heavily on their technology to survive. What about psychological factors? Asked Torres. Unknown, but based on their ship designs and expansion patterns, the Kreks probably haven't faced serious resistance in generations. They're used to winning through superior numbers and technology. Torres nodded. That was important information. An enemy that had never been truly challenged might not know how to respond when their usual tactics failed. On the 4th day of the journey, they received an update from the Zephyrian system. An automated probe had managed to escape the blockade and transmit current battle reports. The news was grim. The Kreks had destroyed most of the evacuation ships. Hundreds of thousands of Zephyrian civilians were dead. The survivors were hiding in the outer asteroid belt, trying to avoid Kreks hunter patrols. They're using the survivors for target practice, reported Lieutenant Mills, reading from the probe's data. The Kreks aren't just conquering. They're having fun. Torres felt his jaw clench. He had seen what happened when military forces started treating civilians as entertainment. It never ended well for anyone. Admiral Chen called another meeting. Intelligence suggests the Kreks commander is keeping most of his fleet in close orbit around the planet. He's confident that no one will challenge him. How confident? Asked Captain Wong. Confident enough to split his forces. Half the fleet is hunting refugees while the other half is strip mining the planet's resources. Torres saw the opportunity immediately. A divided enemy was a vulnerable enemy, but the numbers were still overwhelming. Even fighting half the Kreks fleet, the humans would be outnumbered 20-1. What's the plan, Admiral? He asked. Chen smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. We're going to teach them why humans don't start fights. We finish them. She activated the tactical display. The Kreks think in terms of fleet actions and orbital bombardment. They've never faced an enemy willing to ram ships at near light speed or board vessels in hard vacuum. Torres felt a chill run down his spine. Ramming attacks were theoretically possible, but they required a crew willing to die to complete the mission. Boarding actions in space were suicide missions unless you had environmental gear that could function in conditions that would destroy normal equipment, but humans had both the gear and the mindset to make such tactics work. Our advantage isn't technology, Chen continued. It's our willingness to pay prices that other species consider impossible. The Kreks have never fought an enemy that treats certain death as just another tactical option. The briefing continued for 2 hours, covering everything from ship-to-ship combat to ground assault tactics. Torres realized that Admiral Chen wasn't planning a conventional space battle. She was planning something that would either save the Zephyrian survivors or announce humanity's presence to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible. As the fleet approached the edge of Zephyrian space, Torres gathered his crew for a final briefing. They were young, most of them under 30, but they had been trained from childhood in a military tradition that valued results over survival. In 6 hours, we're going to jump into a system where an entire civilization is being murdered, he told them. We're outnumbered, outgunned, and fighting an enemy we know nothing about. He looked around at their faces. Not one of them looked worried. But we have one advantage, he continued. We're human. We come from a world that spends every day trying to kill us. We've learned to fight not just our enemies, but our own planet. Lieutenant Mills raised her hand. What are our chances, Captain? Torres thought about Earth's military history. Humans had a long tradition of winning impossible fights through sheer stubbornness and creative tactics. Honestly, probably not good, he said. But the Zephyrians don't have anyone else. And if we don't try, we'll never be able to live with ourselves. The crew nodded. That was the human way. Sometimes you fought not because you could win, but because it was the right thing to do. As the jump countdown began, Torres strapped himself into his command chair and thought about the alien families hiding in the asteroid belt, hoping that someone somewhere cared enough to help them. In 30 seconds, they would find out if humanity was ready to announce itself to the galaxy. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Ethros system and immediately faced a scene from hell. Massive Krex dreadnoughts hung in orbit around the planet like vultures, their weapons systematically destroying anything that tried to escape. Debris fields marked where evacuation ships had died. Jesus Christ, whispered Lieutenant Mills from the sensor station aboard the Relentless. They're not even trying to board the civilian ships. They're just blowing them apart. Captain Torres watched the tactical display with growing anger. The Krex had turned the systematic murder of civilians into a sport. Their ships moved in formation, hunting down refugee vessels that were desperately trying to hide in the asteroid belt. All ships, report status. Admiral Chen's voice came through the communications channel. One by one, the human commanders checked in. 15 destroyers, 6 heavy cruisers, 2 carriers, and the flagship, against more than 1,000 Krex vessels. Admiral, called Commander Kim from the intelligence station on the Indomitable. I'm reading massive energy signatures from the Krex fleet. Their ships are 3 times larger than our heaviest cruisers. Any weaknesses? Chen asked. Their design philosophy seems focused on intimidation. Lots of armor and impressive weapons, but they're built like floating fortresses, slow and heavy. Torres studied the enemy formations through his scope. The Krex ships moved in predictable patterns like they were following a textbook. Their positioning suggested they had never faced an enemy that would try unconventional tactics. All ships, listen carefully. Admiral Chen's voice was calm and steady. We're going to hit them with everything we have, but not the way they expect. Torres, Wang, Chen, your ships are with me. We're going to punch through their formation and get to those refugee ships. What about the rest of the fleet? Asked Captain Davis from the destroyer Fury. You're going to cause as much chaos as possible. Make them think we have more ships than we do. Hit and run, ramming attacks, whatever it takes to keep them off balance. Torres felt his heart rate increase. Ramming attacks meant using ships as weapons. It was a tactic that only worked if your crew was willing to die to complete the mission. Captain Davis, Chen continued, I need a volunteer for a special mission. Yes, Admiral. One of their command ships is hanging back from the main formation. Big ugly thing with too many weapons. If someone could take out their command structure. Davis was quiet for a moment. Torres knew what he was thinking. Taking out a command ship would require getting close enough to do serious damage. Against a ship that size, it would mean sacrificing your own vessel. I volunteer, Davis said simply. Captain, Chen said softly. You understand what I'm asking? Yes, Admiral. My crew and I discussed it during the jump. If it means saving those civilians, we're ready. Torres felt a chill run down his spine. Davis had a crew of 80 young people who had just volunteered to die for aliens they had never met. All ships, execute, Chen ordered. The human fleet scattered like wolves attacking a herd. The Krex formation, designed to deal with conventional fleet actions, suddenly found itself facing enemies that were ignoring all the rules of space combat. Torres pushed the Relentless to maximum acceleration, heading straight for a group of Krex ships that were herding refugee vessels toward a kill zone. His ship was tiny compared to the alien dreadnoughts, but it was also fast and highly maneuverable. Weapons online, reported his gunner, Sergeant Jackson. Target acquisition locked. Fire everything, Torres ordered. The Relentless unleashed its full armament at point-blank range. Nuclear missiles and particle beams tore into the side of a Krek ship that was 10 times larger. The alien vessel's shields flared and died, and secondary explosions rippled along its hull. "Direct hit," Jackson called out. "Their armor is tougher than expected, but we punched through." The Krek ship began to list, atmosphere bleeding from dozens of hull breaches. But its weapons were still active, and they were now focused entirely on the tiny human destroyer. "Incoming plasma torpedoes," Mills warned. "Evasive maneuvers," Torres ordered. The Relentless danced between the incoming weapons, using its superior maneuverability to stay one step ahead of destruction. But Torres knew they couldn't keep it up forever. The Krek ship had too many weapons. "Captain," Mills called out, "I'm reading multiple human ships converging on our position." Torres checked his tactical display. 3 other human destroyers were racing toward his location, abandoning their own targets to help with the rescue mission. It was a risky move that left other parts of the battle plan undermanned, but it was also completely human. No one got left behind. Meanwhile, Captain Davis was making his run on the Krek's command ship. The Fury was a small destroyer, barely 200 meters long. The Krek's command vessel was over 3 kilometers of armored depth. "All hands, this is the captain," Davis announced over the ship's intercom. "In 60 seconds, we're going to ram that command ship at maximum velocity. It's been an honor serving with all of you." The Fury's engines roared to life, pushing the little ship far beyond its design limits. Davis had ordered all safety systems disabled and rerouted every bit of power to the engines and inertial compensators. The Krek saw them coming and began firing everything they had. Plasma beams and missile swarms filled the space around the tiny human ship. The Fury's shields overloaded within seconds, and her hull began to glow cherry red from the heat of incoming weapons. But the little destroyer kept coming. 10 seconds to impact," Davis announced calmly. "All hands brace for—" The Fury struck the command ship's center section at nearly 20% of light speed. The kinetic energy release was equivalent to a small nuclear weapon. The massive Krek's vessel simply broke apart, its hull unable to absorb that much force. The explosion lit up space for hundreds of kilometers in every direction. "My God," whispered Mills aboard the Relentless. "They actually did it." The destruction of the command ship sent shockwaves through the Krek's formation. For the first time in their military history, they were facing an enemy that treated suicide attacks as standard tactics, but the humans were just getting started. Lieutenant Elena Vasquez was leading a boarding party toward a Krek ship that had captured a Zephyrian transport. Her team of 12 Marines was equipped with powered armor that could function in hard vacuum and radiation levels that would kill most galactic species. "Remember," she told her team as their assault shuttle approached the enemy ship, "we're not here to take prisoners. We're here to get those civilians out alive." The shuttle punched through the Krek ship's hull like a bullet through paper. Vasquez and her Marines immediately found themselves in an environment that would challenge most military forces. The Kreks had filled their ship with a toxic atmosphere that was supposed to kill any boarders within minutes the humans barely noticed. "Atmosphere is corrosive to most carbon-based life forms," reported Corporal Martinez, checking his sensors. "Also high radiation levels and artificial gravity set to crush most humanoid species." "Feels like home," Vasquez replied. She had grown up on a mining colony where the atmosphere was poisonous and the radiation would sterilize most alien equipment. "Let's go find those civilians." The Marines moved through the Krek ship like ghosts. Their armor let them operate in conditions that the Kreks considered impossible for organic life forms. They moved through sections flooded with radiation, past atmosphere processors that were pumping out toxic gas, and through gravitational fields that would crush most galactic species. When they found the Zephyrian prisoners, Vasquez was shocked by what she saw. The aliens were small and delicate, with large eyes and skin that looked like it had never seen sunlight. They were huddled in a cargo bay, terrified and dying from exposure to conditions that humans considered mildly uncomfortable. "It's okay," Vasquez said, activating her suit's universal translator. "We're here to help." One of the Zephyrians, an elderly male with silver skin, looked up at her. His eyes were wide with disbelief. You're breathing the poison air," he whispered. Vasquez looked around. To her, the ship's atmosphere was unpleasant but not dangerous. To the Zephyrians, it was a death sentence. "We're humans," she said simply. "We come from a very dangerous world." As her team evacuated the prisoners, Vasquez realized that the galaxy was about to learn something important about Earth's children. They didn't just survive in hostile environments. They thrived in them. The battle raged for 6 hours. When it ended, the Kreks had lost 30% of their fleet and their entire command structure. The surviving alien ships retreated to the edge of the system, unwilling to face an enemy that used tactics they couldn't understand or predict. The humans had lost 4 ships and nearly 300 people, but they had saved over 50,000 Zephyrian civilians. As Admiral Chen surveyed the battlefield, she realized that humanity had just announced its presence to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible. Word of this battle would spread to every civilized world within months. The age of humanity hiding on the edge of known space was over. 3 weeks after the Battle of Ethros, the galaxy was buzzing with news that no one could quite believe. An unknown species had appeared from nowhere and destroyed a third of the Krex Dominion's most powerful fleet. The implications were staggering. Ambassador Tel Quinn of the Ethereal Hegemony stood in his research chamber, studying the data that his agents had collected from the battle site. The Ethereals were the galaxy's most advanced civilization, beings of pure energy who had transcended physical limitations millions of years ago. They viewed the universe through perfect logic and mathematical precision. The data from Ethros made no sense. "Show me the tactical analysis again," Tel Quinn commanded his artificial intelligence. The holographic display showed the human fleet's movements during the battle. 15 small ships had engaged over 1,000 larger vessels and won. The humans had used tactics that no civilized species would consider: ramming attacks, boarding actions in hard vacuum, and weapons that caused massive radiation contamination. Analysis of debris suggests the unknown species uses primitive nuclear technology, the AI reported. Their ships are heavily armored but technologically inferior to standard galactic designs. "Then how did they win?" Tel Quinn asked. "Unknown. The enemy fleet appeared to be operating under psychological constraints that prevented effective resistance." Tel Quinn studied the human ship designs. They were built like weapons rather than vessels. Thick armor, redundant systems, and what appeared to be radiation shielding that was 10 times heavier than necessary for normal space travel. "Run a biological analysis on the atmospheric samples recovered from the human wreckage," he ordered. The AI processed the data for several minutes. When the results appeared, Tel Quinn felt something that Ethereals rarely experienced: surprise. The atmospheric samples contain oxygen levels toxic to most galactic species, the AI reported. Also present, industrial pollutants, biological pathogens, and radiation isotopes at levels that would require emergency medical treatment for any known life form. That was their ship's atmosphere, confirmed. Analysis suggests this species evolved in environmental conditions that would be classified as a Class 2 death world. Tel Quinn had studied theoretical xenobiology for millennia. Class 2 death worlds were considered uninhabitable by any reasonable species. High gravity, toxic atmosphere, aggressive pathogens, and radiation levels that would sterilize standard galactic equipment. Most scientists believed that intelligent life could not evolve under such conditions. What is the probability that a species from a Class 2 death world could develop space travel? Tel Quinn asked. Previous calculations suggested less than 0.001%. However, the existence of these humans suggests our models are incomplete. Meanwhile, in Krex space, War Admiral Tekran was facing the first military defeat in Dominion history. He stood in his command chamber aboard the massive dreadnought Decimator, trying to understand how his fleet had been humiliated by a handful of primitive ships. "Show me the battle recordings again," he ordered his tactical officer. The holographic display replayed the final moments of the battle. Tekran watched as the tiny human destroyer Fury accelerated directly into his command ship at suicidal velocity. No reasonable species would sacrifice an entire ship and crew just to destroy a single enemy vessel. Analysis of the human attack patterns suggests they were willing to accept casualty rates of up to 100%, reported his intelligence officer, Subcommander Vextar. This behavior pattern has no precedent in galactic military history. Tekran felt his mandibles click in frustration. The Krex had built their empire on the simple principle that superior technology and numbers always won. They had never faced an enemy that was willing to die to achieve victory. "What do we know about their homeworld?" he asked. "Long-range scouts have identified the system they came from," Vextar replied. "Initial scans suggest a Class D Earthian death world. Extreme gravity, toxic atmosphere, and massive radiation fields. Impossible. No intelligent species could evolve under those conditions. Nevertheless, the evidence suggests they did. Furthermore, preliminary biological analysis indicates that these conditions may have been advantageous to their development." Thekron studied the tactical data. The humans had operated in environmental conditions that would have killed his troops within minutes. They had fought in hard vacuum, toxic atmospheres, and radiation fields that would have disrupted Krek's equipment. More disturbing was their psychological profile. The humans had treated certain death as just another tactical option. They had sacrificed ships and crew members without hesitation to achieve their objectives. "What is their current military strength?" Thekron asked. "Unknown. The fleet that engaged us appears to have been a rapid response force rather than their main military. If their entire species follows similar military doctrine." Vextar didn't need to finish the sentence. If the humans had thousands of ships crewed by beings willing to die for their cause, the Krek's dominion was facing an existential threat. On the peaceful world of Sanctuary, home to the Galactic Civilization Council, President Mertok was reading reports that made his scales itch with worry. The council represented 57 peaceful species that had formed a loose alliance to promote trade and prevent conflicts. The sudden appearance of aggressive humans threatened to upset the delicate balance of galactic politics. "What do we know about their intentions?" Mertok asked his security advisor. "They claim to have responded to the Zephyrian distress call, purely for humanitarian reasons," replied Counselor Yathara. "But their military capabilities suggest they could be a major threat to galactic stability." Mertok reviewed the battle reports from Ethros. The humans had saved 50,000 Zephyrian civilians, but they had done so using tactics that horrified most civilized species. Nuclear weapons, ramming attacks, and casualty rates that suggested they valued their mission over their own lives. "Have they made any demands?" he asked. "None. They delivered the Zephyrian refugees to Council space and then withdrew to their own territory. They haven't requested membership, trade agreements, or territorial concessions. That was almost more disturbing than if they had been openly aggressive. Most species that developed powerful militaries used them to expand their territory or influence. The humans seem to have built their fleet purely for defensive and humanitarian purposes." "What does the Xenobiology Department say about their homeworld?" Mertok asked. Counselor Yathara consulted her datapad. "Dr. Morenti has completed her analysis of the human biological samples. Her report is concerning." "How so?" "According to her research, humans are not just adapted to survive on a death world. They appear to be specifically evolved for violence and survival in extreme conditions." Mertok felt his stomach clench. "Explain." "Redundant organ systems, enhanced healing capabilities, resistance to radiation and toxins, and psychological resilience that allows them to function in conditions that would cause most species to suffer complete mental breakdown." The report went on to detail human physiology in clinical terms that made Mertok increasingly uncomfortable. Humans had evolved on a world so dangerous that their entire biology was geared toward survival and combat. Their immune systems could handle pathogens that would kill most galactic species. Their bone density and muscle structure were adapted to gravity that would crush smaller aliens. Most disturbing was their psychological profile. Humans appeared to form strong emotional bonds that made them willing to sacrifice themselves for their group. This pack loyalty, combined with their natural aggression and survival instincts, made them formidable opponents. "What are our options?" Mertok asked. "Limited," Yathara replied. "We could attempt to integrate them into the galactic community, but their military capabilities make them impossible to control. We could try to isolate them, but they've already demonstrated the ability to project force across interstellar distances." "What about diplomacy?" "Unknown. They've refused all attempts at formal contact. Their only communication has been a simple message." We came because people were dying. We will come again if needed. Murtaugh realized that the galaxy was facing something unprecedented. Most species developed technology to overcome environmental challenges. Humans had developed technology to amplify their natural advantages. The galaxy had spent millennia building a civilization based on the assumption that advanced species would choose cooperation over conflict. The humans were forcing everyone to reconsider that assumption. As reports continued to arrive from across known space, one thing became clear. Word of the human intervention at Ethros was spreading rapidly. Some species were expressing gratitude for humanity's protection of innocent civilians. Others were demanding action to contain this new threat. But everyone was asking the same question: what did the humans want? The answer, when it finally came, would reshape galactic civilization forever. 6 months after the Battle of Ethros, Admiral Sarah Chen found herself in the most important diplomatic meeting in human history. She sat across from representatives of both the Galactic Civilization Council and the Krex Dominion in a neutral space station that had been hastily constructed for these negotiations. The meeting had been called after 3 more incidents where human fleets had responded to distress calls from civilian populations under attack. Each time, the humans had won impossible victories through tactics that horrified other species, but saved innocent lives. The galaxy wanted answers. "Admiral Chen," said President Murtaugh of the Council, his reptilian features tense with worry, "your species has disrupted the balance of power that has maintained peace for centuries. We need to understand your intentions." Across the table, War Admiral Thekron of the Krex clicked his mandibles aggressively. "Your forces have committed acts of war against the Dominion. We demand compensation for our losses." Chen looked at both aliens calmly. She had spent weeks preparing for this moment, knowing that her words would determine humanity's place in galactic civilization. "We didn't come here to conquer anyone," she said simply. "We came because people were dying." "That's not enough," Thekron snarled. "Your primitive species has humiliated the greatest military force in the galaxy. This cannot stand." "Our primitive species," Chen replied with a slight smile, "just saved 3 civilizations from extinction. If that humiliates you, maybe you should reconsider your priorities." The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Behind Chen sat Dr. Sarah Kim, humanity's first official diplomat. Kim had spent months studying galactic politics and had reached some disturbing conclusions about how the galaxy actually worked. "Perhaps we should discuss the real issue," Kim said, standing up. "The current galactic order has a fundamental problem." President Murtaugh tilted his head. "What problem?" "Stagnation," Kim replied. "Advanced species like the ethereals have become so focused on preserving their perfect societies that they've stopped taking risks. Peaceful species like the council members have built comfortable worlds but forgot how to defend them. Military species like the Krex have become bullies because no one has been willing to stop them." She activated a holographic display showing galactic demographics. "In the past 1,000 years, how many new species have joined the galactic community? How many major technological breakthroughs have occurred? How many times has anyone challenged the established order?" The alien representatives looked uncomfortable as the data showed a clear pattern of technological and social stagnation. "Earth represents something different," Kim continued. "We evolved on a world that forced us to innovate or die. We developed technology not to create perfect societies, but to survive in impossible conditions." "Your point?" asked Ambassador Telquin of the Ethereals, his energy form flickering with annoyance. "Our point," Admiral Chen said, standing up, "is that the galaxy needs us as much as we need the galaxy. You've built a beautiful civilization, but you've forgotten how to protect it." She gestured to War Admiral Thekron. "The Krex have been expanding for 50 years because no one was willing to pay the price to stop them. How many species have gone extinct while the Council debated diplomatic solutions?" "We prefer peaceful resolution of conflicts," President Murtaugh said defensively. "So do we," Chen replied. "But sometimes peace requires the willingness to fight for it." The meeting continued for hours, with each side presenting their vision of how galactic civilization should function. The Council wanted humanity to join the existing system and accept limitations on their military expansion. The Krex demanded that humans submit to Dominion authority. The Ethereals proposed studying humanity as an interesting but dangerous anomaly. Finally, Chen stood up and made the proposal that would change everything. We're offering something new, she said. The Deathworld Compact. She activated a new holographic display showing a map of galactic space. Any species anywhere can call for help. If civilians are being slaughtered, if a peaceful world is under attack, if anyone needs rescue from impossible conditions, they send a signal. And we respond. That's vigilantism, protested President Mirtok. That's responsibility, Chen corrected. But here's the important part. We don't rule anyone. We don't demand tribute or obedience. We don't impose our government or our values. We just show up when people are dying. The room fell silent as the aliens processed this unprecedented proposal. What do you want in return? Asked Telquin suspiciously. Nothing, Kim said. Well, almost nothing. We want the freedom to respond to distress calls without interference. We want trade relationships with anyone willing to deal with us fairly, and we want to be left alone to build our own society. War Admiral Tekran laughed harshly. You expect us to believe you want nothing? Every species wants something. Chen looked at him with pity. That's the difference between us and you. We already have everything we need. Earth taught us that survival and prosperity come from working together and protecting each other, not from conquering and enslaving. She stood up and walked to the center of the room. The Deathworld Compact is simple. Any species can join by agreeing to 3 principles. First, protect civilians. Second, respect the independence of member species. Third, contribute what you can to mutual defense and disaster relief. And if we refuse? Thekran demanded. Then you refuse, Chen said with a shrug. We're not going to force anyone to join, but we're also not going to stop responding to distress calls just because it makes you uncomfortable. The negotiations continued for 3 days. In the end, 17 species signed the Deathworld Compact immediately, including the Zephyrians and 3 other races that had been liberated by human intervention. The Council voted to maintain diplomatic relations while remaining officially neutral. The Kreks stormed out, threatening war. The Ethereals surprised everyone by requesting detailed information about the Compact's structure. As beings of pure logic, they recognized the mathematical elegance of a system based on voluntary cooperation rather than hierarchical control. 1 year later, Admiral Chen stood on the observation deck of Deathworld Station, a massive space facility built in the contested zone between Council and Krek space. The station served as humanity's embassy, military headquarters, and symbol of a new way of organizing galactic civilization. Through the massive windows, she could see ships from dozens of species coming and going. Human vessels worked alongside Zephyrian traders, ethereal research ships, and even a few former Kreks worlds that had declared independence and joined the Compact. Admiral, called Commander Torres, approaching with a data pad. We've got 3 new distress calls. Asteroid mining colony trapped by solar flares, refugee convoy under attack by pirates, and a plague outbreak on a rim world. Chen smiled. Which one do you want? I'll take the pirates, Torres said. Captain Vasquez volunteered for the plague response. She's got the best medical team. The solar flare rescue is perfect for Captain Wang's heavy ships. As her officers prepared their rescue missions, Chen reflected on how much had changed. The galaxy was still divided between those who embraced the Compact and those who preferred the old ways. But for the first time in centuries, there was an alternative to accepting oppression or stagnation. The final scene showed a mixed crew of humans, Zephyrians and former Kreks working together to evacuate civilians from a world about to be destroyed by its dying star. They worked in conditions that would have been impossible for most galactic species, using human technology and alien expertise to save lives that no one else could reach. As the last evacuation ship jumped to safety, the team watched the star collapse into a white dwarf, destroying a world but not its people. That's 30,000 lives saved, reported the mission coordinator, a young Zephyrian engineer named Kethara. 30,000 families that get to see tomorrow, added Sergeant Martinez, a human marine who had volunteered for the rescue mission. 30,000 reasons why the Compact matters, concluded Captain Vasquez. Over the communication channel, Chen knew that the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had introduced the radical idea that advanced civilizations had a responsibility to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Not for conquest or control, but simply because it was the right thing to do. The age of the Deathworlders had begun, and the galaxy was learning that sometimes the most dangerous species was also the most committed to preserving life. As more distress calls arrived, and more species requested membership in the compact, one thing became clear. The universe was a dangerous place, but it didn't have to be a hopeless one. Sometimes salvation came from the most unexpected places, even from a small blue world on the edge of known space, where evolution had created guardians who were willing to fight anyone, anywhere, to protect the innocent. The human fleet prepared for its next mission, ready to prove once again that the children of Earth would answer any call for help, no matter the cost.